If this crossed your path, your new timeline just collapsed into existence, and you're about to discover why that's the best thing that could happen to you right now. She's been experiencing it for weeks. Synchronicities so precise they feel like the universe learned to text back. Time distortions that make hours feel like minutes. Dreams that preview tomorrow's conversations word for word. He keeps dismissing it as coincidence until the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Reality is responding to his thoughts faster than ever before, and something fundamental has shifted in how manifestation works. Here's what nobody tells you about quantum momentum. It doesn't announce itself with spiritual fanfare or mystical ceremonies. It shows up disguised as ordinary moments that feel extraordinary, like stumbling across exactly the right information at precisely the moment you need it most. The fact that these specific words found their way to your screen isn't random algorithm luck. It's evidence that your consciousness has already begun operating on an accelerated timeline where thoughts, opportunities, and synchronicities collapse into present reality with supernatural precision. In the next few minutes, you'll understand why your old strategies for manifestation suddenly feel like swimming upstream, and more importantly, you'll discover the effortless protocol that works with quantum intelligence instead of against it. When someone begins experiencing quantum momentum, the first thing they notice isn't subtle. It's like the universe suddenly learned how to use instant messaging. She thinks about her grandmother who passed away years ago, and within hours, she finds an old photo of them together that she'd never seen before, tucked inside a book she randomly picked up. These aren't coincidences anymore. They're confirmations that her assinatura energetica is shifting into a new frequency. The synchronicities become so precise that denying them feels like trying to convince yourself that gravity doesn't exist while standing on solid ground. One morning, he wakes up from a dream where he's having a specific conversation with his boss about a project that doesn't exist yet. 3 hours later, that exact conversation unfolds word for word in the office break room, and by afternoon, he's leading the very project he dreamed about. These temporal distortions feel like receiving previews of tomorrow's movie while still watching today's episode. His consciousness seems to be operating on a different timeline, where linear time becomes as flexible as silly putty, and the campo quantico responds to his authentic frequency like a perfectly tuned radio receiving clear signals. The most striking part isn't just the synchronicities, it's how relationships begin accelerating toward their natural conclusion without drama or forced conversations. She notices that friendships that were meant to deepen suddenly flourish with effortless connection, while others gently fade away without conflict or hurt feelings. It's as if everyone involved receives the same internal memo about what serves growth and what doesn't. The impulso quantico doesn't create chaos, it creates coherence, organizing life's elements with the precision of a master conductor, orchestrating a symphony where every instrument knows exactly when to play. A few months ago, I experienced something that shattered my understanding of how manifestation actually works. I'd been struggling with a creative project for weeks, hitting wall after wall, when I decided to completely let go of the outcome during a morning walk. Within 30 minutes of that surrender, my phone buzzed with a text from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, offering exactly the collaboration I needed. But here's the kicker. They later told me they'd felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to reach out to me at that precise moment. The feedback loop between my rendition coherente and their inspired action created a bridge that bypassed months of traditional networking and effort. What you're about to discover next will show you why these signs aren't random occurrences, but rather evidence of a fundamental shift happening at the deepest levels of reality itself. Understanding quantum impulse requires grasping a concept that sounds complex, but operates as simply as ice melting into water. When ice transforms into liquid, the H2O molecules don't disappear. They simply reorganize into a new pattern with different properties and possibilities. In the same way, when someone's consciousness shifts into quantum momentum, their fundamental essence remains intact, while their organizational structure undergoes a complete recalibration. The campo quantico doesn't destroy the old version of them. It reveals the expanded version that was always there, waiting beneath the surface like water waiting within ice. This reorganization happens through what scientists call symmetry breaking, a fancy term for when a system naturally evolves from one stable state to another more complex one. Think of it like a perfectly balanced pencil standing on its tip. Eventually, it must fall in one direction, creating a new stability that's actually more sustainable than the original precarious balance. Her life experiences this same principle when old patterns that required constant effort to maintain suddenly collapse into new arrangements that feel effortless and aligned. The breakthrough isn't about forcing change, it's about allowing the natural acceleration toward greater coherencia to unfold. What makes this process extraordinary is how individual transformations contribute to a larger morphic field that benefits everyone. When he stops trying to control outcomes and starts surfing the impulse, his shift creates ripples that make it easier for others to access the same state. It's like being the first person to walk through fresh snow. Each footstep creates a path that others can follow with less resistance. The limiar de coherencia gets reached faster when multiple people are simultaneously choosing flow over force, collaboration over competition, and confianza over analysis. The most fascinating aspect is how this operates completely outside linear time constraints. She discovers that her decision to trust the process doesn't just affect her future. It somehow retroactively organizes past events to support her current trajectory. Conversations she had years ago suddenly reveal new layers of meaning, and random encounters from her past now appear as perfect preparation for her present opportunities. The Intelligentsia Cosmica orchestrates across multiple timelines simultaneously, creating a web of support that defies conventional cause and effect thinking. But here's where it gets really interesting. What you're about to learn will completely reframe how you understand the relationship between surrender and manifestation. For 14 long months, he tried every technique in the book to force his breakthrough into existence. Morning routines, visualization boards, affirmations repeated until his voice went hoarse, elaborate rituals timed to moon phases, all performed with the precision of a scientist conducting experiments. But instead of acceleration, he experienced friction. Instead of flow, he faced resistance so thick it felt like running through wet concrete. Each technique became another form of control, dressed up in spiritual language, and the universe responded to his tight grip by creating more delays, more obstacles, more reasons why not yet made sense. The moment of rendition came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Nothing mystical about it. Exhausted from trying so hard, he sat on his living room floor and said out loud, "I don't know how to do this anymore, and I'm done pretending I do." The words left his mouth, and something physical shifted in his chest. Like a knot that had been tied for years suddenly loosened. Within that surrender wasn't defeat. It was the recognition that the impulso quantico was already flowing, and his job wasn't to create it, but to stop blocking it. The relief felt like finally putting down heavy luggage he'd been carrying up a mountain, realizing the summit was actually at the bottom. What happened next demonstrated the exponential difference between controlling and collaborating with quantum momentum. Within 3 weeks, precise orchestrations began unfolding that would have taken years of strategic planning to manufacture. The right people appeared at exactly the right moments with exactly the right resources. Relationships that had felt forced and draining naturally completed their cycles, replaced by connections so authentic they required zero maintenance energy. Creative projects that had been stuck for months suddenly flowed out in days, as if they'd been waiting in the wings for him to stop directing the show. Last summer, I experienced this shift firsthand when I stopped trying to make a major opportunity happen and simply acknowledged that if it was aligned, it would find me. 2 days later, literally 48 hours, I received 3 separate invitations to collaborate on projects that were better than anything I'd been chasing. But the real revelation wasn't the speed, it was the quality. These opportunities came with ease, clarity, and mutual enthusiasm, completely devoid of the negotiation and convincing that characterized my previous hustling approach. The Acceleración Quántica wasn't just faster, it was fundamentally different in texture and tone. The profound realization is that quantum impulse accelerates both manifestation and consciousness simultaneously. He doesn't just get what he wants faster, he evolves into someone who desires differently, recognizes opportunities more clearly, and responds from his frequencia authentica rather than conditioned patterns. The impulse doesn't just deliver results, it transforms the person receiving them, creating a feedback loop where each manifestation expands capacity for the next level of co-creación. Control creates linear progress. Surrender activates exponential expansion. What comes next will reveal why your desires themselves are about to undergo a complete recalibration. When quantum momentum activates, desire transforms from a hungry ghost into a sophisticated GPS system. She stops experiencing wanting as lack and starts recognizing it as directional intelligence from her higher consciousness. The same way a compass doesn't create magnetic north but simply points toward it, her desires begin functioning as internal navigation rather than evidence of what's missing from her life. This shift feels like the difference between being dragged by cravings and being guided by wisdom. Suddenly, every impulse carries information about her next evolutionary step rather than proof of her current inadequacy. The most practical example shows up in how he responds to signs that something already exists in potential. Instead of desperately grasping when opportunities appear, he receives them with the calm recognition of someone who ordered food and hears their number called. When the perfect apartment listing appears after months of searching, he doesn't panic apply with desperate energy. He responds with the steady confidence of someone whose asignatura energetica already matches that reality. This co-creación coherente gives direction without attachment to specific timing or methodology, trusting that quantum intelligence orchestrates better than any personal strategy could. The GPS analogy becomes even more precise when she realizes her role in manifestación. She inputs the destination, what she genuinely desires, but doesn't try to control every traffic light, construction zone, or route recalculation along the way. When the quantum field suggests a detour through an unexpected opportunity or relationship, she follows the guidance instead of insisting on her original route. Some delays turn out to be perfect timing. Some redirections lead to destinations better than she originally imagined. The campo quantico operates with access to variables her linear mind could never compute. What distinguishes authentic desire from ego-driven wanting becomes crystal clear during this recalibration phase. He notices that desires aligned with his frequencia authentica feel expansive, energizing, and somehow inevitable, like remembering something he'd temporarily forgotten rather than acquiring something foreign. Meanwhile, wants driven by comparison, fear, or social conditioning feel contractive and require constant effort to maintain enthusiasm. The impulso quantico amplifies authentic desires while naturally dissolving artificial ones, creating a purification process that refines his internal compass toward increasingly precise navigation. This recalibration prepares you for something remarkable. You're about to discover why your personal transformation is part of a much larger collective awakening happening right now. This quantum acceleration isn't happening in isolated pockets. It's a janella cosmica opening for countless people simultaneously across the planet. She notices friends who've never discussed consciousness suddenly sharing experiences of synchronicities, temporal distortions, and rapid manifestations that mirror her own journey. Colleagues at work mention feeling pulled toward major life changes with unusual clarity. Even strangers in coffee shop conversations seem to be wrestling with the same themes, letting go of control, trusting intuition, recognizing that old systems no longer fit their expanding awareness. The field is reaching critical mass, where individual transformations create exponential momentum for collective evolution. The evidence appears in both sweeping social shifts and intimate personal breakthroughs. He watches industries that operated on competition and scarcity beginning to reorganize around collaboration and abundance. Communities forming not through forced networking, but through natural magnetic attraction of aligned frequencies. Structures that seemed immovable suddenly showing cracks as collective consciousness demands authenticity over performance. These aren't gradual changes requiring decades. They're quantum leaps happening in compressed timeframes that defy conventional predictions. The campo collettivo is reorganizing at foundational levels, and those surfing the impulse are riding the leading edge of this transformation. Practical benefits show up in ways that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Projects that traditionally required years of development now complete in weeks because the right team members, resources, and opportunities converge with supernatural timing. She launches a business idea on Monday, and by Friday has 3 partnership offers, funding interest, and a waiting list of clients, not through aggressive marketing, but through coherent alignment that attracts matching frequencies. Acceleración doesn't just speed things up. It eliminates unnecessary steps entirely, creating direct pathways where circuitous routes used to exist. Decision-making transforms from agonizing analysis into almost instantaneous clarity. He faces choices that would have paralyzed him for months, and instead finds himself knowing the answer within seconds, not from impulsive reaction, but from deep resonance with his authentic frequency. The option feels obvious, not because he's learned to think better, but because he's learned to sense clearer. Wrong directions reveal themselves through subtle dissonance before significant time or energy gets invested. This navigational precision saves years of backtracking and course correction that characterized his pre-momentum life. Creativity explodes in collective settings where people operating from coherencia gather together. Brainstorming sessions produce breakthrough innovations in hours that individual effort couldn't generate in months. She joins a collaborative project and watches ideas build on each other with a synergistic intelligence that feels like tapping into a shared genius field. Nobody's competing for credit or guarding their contributions. Everyone recognizes they're accessing something larger than individual cleverness. The whole becomes genuinely greater than the sum of its parts when quantum coherence aligns the group. Perhaps most remarkably, conflicts that used to escalate into prolonged drama now dissolve through sudden mutual understanding. He has a disagreement with his business partner that would have historically required mediation and legal intervention, but instead, both simultaneously recognize the deeper truth beneath their positions and find resolution within a single conversation. The shift from opposition to comprehension happens so naturally it's almost anticlimactic. Rendition coherente at the collective level creates space for win-win solutions that competitive consciousness couldn't perceive, proving that collaboration over competition isn't just idealistic philosophy, it's practical quantum mechanics. The next revelation will show you exactly how to work with this impulse instead of against it. The first step isn't activation, it's recognition that the impulso quantico is already flowing through every cell, every thought, every moment of existence. She stops searching for the switch to turn it on and starts noticing how it's been operating beneath her awareness all along. Every synchronicity she's ever experienced, every inexplicable knowing, every time things worked out despite logic suggesting otherwise, all evidence that quantum momentum has been her constant companion, waiting for acknowledgement rather than initiation. This recognition alone shifts her from seeker to surfer, from someone trying to create waves to someone learning to ride them. Avoiding dependency on rigid techniques becomes crucial because techniques themselves can become sophisticated forms of control. He realizes that his morning routine isn't what creates alignment. Alignment creates the inspired desire for morning practices that actually serve him. The meditation app, the journaling protocol, the breathwork sequence, all useful tools when they emerge from flow, all potential obstacles when they become mandatory checkboxes disconnected from genuine resonance. The impulse doesn't require perfect execution of spiritual performance. It responds to authentic frequency, which sometimes looks like disciplined practice and sometimes looks like spontaneous dancing in the kitchen while making breakfast. Practicing rendition coherente means holding clear direction while releasing anxious attachment to specific timelines and methodologies. She writes down her desires with precision, not vague wishes but detailed visions, and then completely surrenders the how and when to intelligentsia cosmica. It's the difference between gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turn white versus resting her hands gently while remaining alert and responsive. Direction without apego creates a frequency that says, I know where I'm going and I trust the vehicle to get me there, which allows the campo quantico to orchestrate with far more sophistication than personal planning could manufacture. The analogy of surfing captures this perfectly. He doesn't create the wave, doesn't control its size or timing, and certainly can't carry the ocean in a bucket back to shore. His role is showing up, positioning himself appropriately, recognizing the right wave when it builds, and then committing fully to the ride. Trying to force quantum momentum is like trying to surf by standing on the beach and demanding the ocean comply with his schedule. But when he learns to read the conditions, trust his intuition about timing, and surrender to the wave's power while maintaining his balance, that's when the real magic of acceleration happens. Children demonstrate this natural confianza before the world teaches them otherwise. Watch a toddler learning to walk. She falls repeatedly, but never questions whether walking is possible or creates elaborate visualization protocols before trying again. She simply trusts the process, adjusts based on feedback, and keeps moving forward with unself-conscious faith in her body's intelligence. That same innate trust in the universe's intelligence is what adults must remember, not naive bypassing of discernment, but sophisticated recognition that the same force organizing galaxies and heartbeats can definitely handle the details of their manifestations when they stop micromanaging. The declaration anchor, I surf the impulse, isn't just a cute phrase, it's a frequency-setting statement that reprograms the relationship with quantum momentum. When he writes these words and repeats them during moments of doubt or control impulse, he's reminding his nervous system that you are the impulse, inseparable from the accelerating force itself. Not someone trying to access something external, but the living embodiment of quantum consciousness choosing to recognize itself. This shift from separation to identification dissolves the final barrier between wanting and being, creating the ultimate feedback loop where consciousness accelerates its own evolution through willing participation in the cosmic dance. Now that you understand the protocol, something extraordinary is about to be revealed about why this message found you at exactly this moment. Let's get crystal clear. You don't have the impulse. You are the impulse. Every synchronicity, temporal distortion, and impossible timing manifestation isn't external forces acting upon you. They're your consciousness recognizing itself as the quantum momentum orchestrating reality all along. The relationships accelerating naturally, decisions arriving with instant clarity, creative breakthroughs flowing effortlessly, all evidence you've stopped trying to access something outside and started remembering your nature as co-creator within the campo quantico. This isn't about acquiring abilities or mastering techniques, it's surrendering the exhausting pretense that you're separate from intelligentsia cosmica. When you embody, I surf the impulse, you're not affirming what you hope to become. You're acknowledging what you've always been. Your future self didn't open a door. You collapsed the timeline, keeping you waiting. Now apply this to every decision moving forward. Will you grip with white knuckles or trust the navigation that brought you here? Hit like as your declaration that you recognize yourself in these words. Share with someone experiencing unexplainable synchronicities. Go to comments and write accelerating. Your anchoragem, your commitment to surfing instead of fighting. Subscribe and activate notifications because next we reveal if this found you, it's a sign. Your future self has opened the door to your new timeline. Your new timeline is already writing itself.